Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. Past presidents routinely assured the American people of the strength of our democracy, but today, on the first anniversary of the deadly attack on our nation's capital, President Biden broke with that tradition. In a scathing rebuke of the former president and his supporters who attempted to overturn the 2020 election, Biden warned that democracy itself is at risk.
Those who stormed this Capitol, and those who instigated and incited, and those who called on them to do so, held a dagger at the throat of America, at American democracy. They didn't come here out of patriotism or principle. They came here in rage, not in service of America, but rather in service of one man. And so at this moment, we must decide, what kind of nation are we going to be? Are we going to be a nation that accepts political violence as a norm? Are we going to be a nation where we allow partisan election officials to overturn the legally expressed will of the people?
But Donald Trump's big lie persists. A staggering 71% of Republicans and 33% of all Americans believe President Biden's victory was illegitimate, according to a new University of Massachusetts poll. Combined with the 32 bills signed into law last year that allow partisan actors to hijack elections across the country and the absence of federal voting rights protections, today's anniversary begs the question, how durable is our democracy? Joining me now to discuss is Mary C. Curtis, CQ Roll Call columnist and host of Equal Time podcast, and Hasan Kwame Jeffries, Associate Professor of History at Ohio State University. So, Mary, I guess I'll start with you. The big question hanging out there is, how durable do you believe that our democracy is, and does the January 6th insurrection underscore that we are in a very fragile state at the moment?
I think we are at a very fragile state. I think part of it is this myth of American exceptionalism, that our democracy is so strong. If you think of it, we've only had the semblance of a true democracy since the Voting Rights Act of 1965, when everyone could actually be involved in the franchise. And since then, there has been pushback against that. And we see it even now with these voting bills in the states that are really restricting voting and having new laws that will control who counts the vote. So I think it was a tough speech, but it was a necessary one. And when you saw Vice President Harris in her speech say that January 6th is just like a date of 9/11 or December 7th of 1941, because it was that momentous, and you saw those images, it really, well, it's visual evidence that this was an insurrection. And the polls that you cited are quite troubling, because you saw the amount of Americans who feel that violence is an option. So we know that this isn't over. And not only you see Biden and Harris, but even folks like former President Jimmy Carter, who has been to countries with failing democracies and elections, and he's been an elections monitor, and he's saying we have to get serious about this because democracy is indeed in danger.
Professor Jeffrey, let's drill down more on that. President Jimmy Carter wrote in the New York Times today, our great nation now teeters on the brink of a widening abyss. How striking is it that you have two presidents, one sitting, one former, saying that our country, our democracy, is literally at the abyss?
It is striking because usually the head of state is the one who provides the reassurance that everything is okay, that the waters may be a little bit rough, but the steering is steady, and they are signaling the warning that so many have already issued, that our nation is really on the precipice. As was just pointed out, not only is our country young in the larger scheme of world history, only 250 or so years old, but our democracy is actually even younger. going back, as was just pointed out, only 50 years or so ago. And I would also say that not only is our democracy teetering on the edge, but we are in a more fragile state now. It is more perilous now, 1 year removed from January 6th, than it was 1 year ago, because even more people have bought into the lie. Even more people, more elected officials are on board with it and are preparing, laying the groundwork for denying and potentially overturning the outcome of future elections. And that is really the death knell, if you ask me.
Mary, one international think tank labeled the U.S. a backsliding democracy in December. Do you agree with that assessment?
I have to say yes, because as the professor pointed out, it has gotten worse. We saw after the insurrection, when they went to certify the election, so many Republicans still voted not to recognize the election of President Joe Biden. And since then, it's become a litmus test that no matter what other conservative issues they're talking about, unless you say that there was the big lie and Trump won the election, that the base will move away from you. And so many of the people, even some folks who were there on January 6th, part of the insurrection, are running for office in the states, running for election boards, school boards, secretaries of states. And as the professor said, they are laying the groundwork to overturn elections in the future. And that is, I think, backsliding. Look at how the world is looking at us. And then you see the former president doing things like endorsing Viktor Orban in Hungary, who is an autocrat, really, saying that this is the path for his party. And it is the Republican Party, the party of Trump. And you have to buy into his lies. I was looking at his notes today, which he sends many of them, and it was frightening how they are trying to recast January 6th and still holding on to the lie, the big lie. So I would have to agree with that assessment. The world is looking at us and they're not liking what they see.
So let's stay on the former president and the big lie. Shortly after Biden's address, Trump continued to claim that the 2020 election was rigged. The governor of Florida said the national media is obsessed with covering January 6th and is trying to milk the January 6th attack. What kind of role, what usefulness was today's remembrance in Washington, across the country, across media? Do you think that much coverage will help to change the narrative around what January 6th meant and also help to dispel in any way, even a little bit, the big lie?
Well, I think it remains to be seen because we have two competing narratives, one rooted in what actually happened, one rooted in fact, and one rooted in fiction. This idea that it was tourist and this was supportive of democracy and all this other nonsense. I think today is important and was important that we sort of plant a flag, if you will, in the ground and say, hold on, let's be clear about what happened. But we, you, myself, historians, scholars, podcast hosts, teachers, can talk about what actually happened all we want. I think today will be remembered by the president's speech, not the former president, but the president's speech and the seriousness with which he spoke and the strength with which he spoke. And it will be important if he continues along this path, if he and others within the Democratic Party in particular continue to say, wait a minute, uh, we have to be clear about what happened. This was an attack on democracy, and we are not going to stand for. We are going to stand in the way of those who want to take a dagger to the throat of democracy. If we do not do that, if the president moves and shifts away from that to some reconciliatory speech and the like, and olive branches and the like with those who seek to undermine democracy, then today will be meaningless. But if he holds to it, if people rally to it, they see the seriousness of it, then I think there is some hope that today will be important for setting the stage for how we think about and remember and respond to what
Right.
happened a year ago.
Mary, I have about a minute left, but I want to just talk strictly politics here. Biden made a real shift today. He has spent his first year trying to play above it all, right? That he was above dealing directly with Trump. He wasn't going to do that. He was just going to do the work. He was going to keep his head down. That was, a sideshow. Today, he decided that that was no longer a workable strategy. Some people were reporting that he's been working on this speech for 2 weeks or so, going more directly at Donald Trump, because by not being engaged with him, they created a void that Trump filled. And he filled it so well that a lot of people believe what Trump was filling it with. What do you make of the shift in strategy by Biden?
I think it's a positive shift. It maybe could have come a little sooner because, yes, we're in a pandemic. That's an important issue. Yes, there's inflation, but democracy is the most important issue of all. And so I think that it is right that Democrats put that front and center. And really now it's up to the voters. What do they want and what do they think?
Mary C. Curtis and Hasan Jeffries, thank you both as always.